Namaste, Jai Hind. Welcome to another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. This episode is being filmed in New Delhi on the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue 2024, which is India's premier multilateral conference which draws thought leaders, politicians, and diplomats from around the world. ANI has teamed up with the Raisina Dialogue team to bring you a series of podcasts on global politics. The topic for discussion today is the Asian Matrix, Taiwan's Road Ahead. The speakers in this session are Dr. Alan Yang, Executive Director, Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation and Distinguished Professor, National Chengchi University; Sana Hashmi, Fellow, Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation; Satura Nagao, Non-Resident Fellow, Hudson Institute, Japan. Thank you so much, gentlemen, lady, for being part of this podcast. I look forward to our conversation. Let me begin with you, Dr. Sana. I was in Taiwan a couple of weeks back, and I was struck with the fact that I hardly saw any Indians there. Because I was basically in Taipei, and usually wherever you go, there'll always be Indians. Even in an Indian restaurant, I didn't see any Indians out there. So it seemed like the place is ripe for having some immigrant workers coming. And sure enough, there was this MOU which was signed where Taiwanese government has encouraged and wants Indian migrant workers to come out there. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think it's a very valid observation because, as you rightly mentioned, Indians are everywhere. We go to the US, we go to Canada, on the airport, you just see Indians. But in Taiwan, we are a very small community. We are just 5,000 people and half of them are students. And I think this is primarily because Indians still do not know that Taiwan is a place where you could go to work, where you could go to study. And people who know, they think that, China threat looms large. What happens if China invades Taiwan? And then I have this conversation with a lot of people in India. And the only question they ask me, what's happening with China? Is it safe? Are there Chinese jets flying over Taiwan? And I'm like, no, you come and see. And, you were there and you must have also seen that how safe it was. Not just in terms of generally how countries are safe, but in terms of China as well. You do not really feel that there is a conflict between China and Taiwan when you're there. So I feel that there's a lack of familiarity, there's lack of awareness. And you also talked about the labor agreement that was just signed last Friday, in fact. Taiwan definitely wants to attract more Indians. As of now, we are primarily working in the white-collar jobs. So the purpose is to get more blue-collar workers from Taiwan and to have more Indians. And Taiwanese government has been very, very receptive towards Indians. So they really want to recruit talent from India. So specifically with this DPP administration, and now DPP has won the third historic term. They really want to reach out to India. They really want to get more Indians. They really want to strengthen people-to-people ties between the two countries.
So Indians who want to go there, what should they look out for, in the sense that what kind of workers do you think that Taiwan wants? One, that. And the second point I want to ask is that, is there any anxiety with regard to China? How does China view it, you think, with Indians warming up to Taiwan, sending their people? More people-to-people contact is not something that China would like.
First question, I'll answer first that. So I feel that what Taiwan wants from India, and when it comes to Indian going to Taiwan, there is declining population in Taiwan, and then the aging population. So Taiwan is in really need of workers. So the primary source of workers are Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, Philippines.
Also, I think.
So mostly Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So they're very used to seeing Southeast Asian coming to Taiwan as migrant workers. So this is the Indians coming as workers. This is a very new idea for even Taiwanese. But I feel with time there will be more familiarity with this thing of Indians coming to Taiwan. Mostly they're looking for in the manufacturing, and as well as for house helpers.
Nursing staff
Nursing,
also?
housing helpers.
Elder care, nursing.
Because there is aging population, so there are more old people in Taiwan. And they need migrant workers. So if they come from Southeast Asia, if they come from India, there is it's definitely cheaper. And of course, there are more people. The China factor, of course, when you talk about India-Taiwan, China factor looms large. And when you talk about Taiwan, I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is China. And I feel specifically with respect to India and Taiwan, China is not very comfortable. I think it's very uneasy about this growing bonhomie between India and Taiwan. And I think the Chinese leadership is also very well aware that if there are more people coming from India to Taiwan, if there are more people-to-people connections, that means that the interest of the government is also going to be piqued. And this is something that the Chinese leadership is not very happy about. There's a lot of disinformation that is emanating from the Chinese sources with respect to India and Taiwan. And people are getting influenced by that.
People in Taiwan are getting influenced.
Both, I feel both sides, people in Taiwan, people in India. So, nowadays what we see is whatever we are seeing on the internet, we just believe it.
Correct.
We do not check. So I feel that this is something that we are grappling with, the issue of Chinese disinformation. But I think I would just say that China is definitely not happy with the growing partnership between India and Taiwan.
Dr. Yang, I would come to you. The future of Asia's security and probably even the world, it's inextricably linked to Taiwan's future. What happens with Taiwan? What are the consequences for Asia, one, and for the world, two, if China decides to go ahead with its expansionist policies and move towards Taiwan?
Well, it's a very important issue. As we know that during the past years, there has been no widely recognized architecture, the security architecture or institution that enable the security cooperation across the Indo-Pacific countries. So the security maintenance process are quite network-based. And it is true that there are some incidents happened from now and then and from different places. And the assertive expansionism of China that expand their military influence in South China Sea, East China Sea, and even extend to Indian Ocean. That caused the crisis and uncertainty, and that endangers the security and stability across the region. Well, Taiwan is on the priority list of China's expansionism. If you look at the past decades interaction between Taiwan and China, I am proud to say that the government of Taiwan never take the risky approach to manage the cross-strait relation. But China, after 2016, it closed the door and turned back to, they don't want to negotiate or even launch the constructive dialogue with Taiwanese government. Because they set up the so-called One China issue as the precondition for any negotiation. So when DPP President Madame Tsai Ing-wen took office since 2016, China ceased any channel of discussion and negotiation with Taiwan. And with this in mind, when it comes to the confrontation or crisis, it will be difficult to manage through constructive way. And apart from that, it is true that not only the military ways of threat, but we know that across Taiwan and China, we had the increasing interdependence relation. And Beijing took the opportunity to weaponize all kinds of the interaction, to weaponize this economic interdependence and to penetrate Taiwan's economy and our society. And that caused the crisis and also the uncertainty to Asian security, even the world security issue.
Do you think that there is scope for negotiations which is non-military with China, or their One China policy negates that completely?
Well, I think the One China policy, what Beijing set up is the precondition for all kind of the engagement and also the discussion with Taiwan. So I think that is a political maneuvered precondition that our government and even our people cannot, will not accept.
Is the youth of the country on board on that they are not going to accept a one China policy and no talks with China is fine by them?
Well, I would say our leader and the government took the responsibility to secure our people and our welfare. So we are open to the discussion and dialogue with China without any precondition.
Right.
So the equal footing dialogue is very important for any sovereignty country.
Dr. Nagao, I'll come to you. How can Taiwan's partners in the region, from Japan to India, integrate Taiwan further into the global systems and their plans for regional security?
That is a very good question. Thank you very much for asking. Taiwan is already an independent country. So maintaining current situation is interest of all countries in the world except China. So that's why the integrated into the global system is a very important part. How to maintain current situation. We can remember what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. Taiwan needs information, but China blocked this flow. In this case, because of the humanitarian background, other country has legitimacy to push China to accept this flow of information. So accepting as a member of the WHO, even if the otherwise, we try to create a situation Taiwan can access the information and access other non-military materials. Of course, military materials are also good, but at the same time, how to integrate it, Taiwan as a part of important global system is very important. And in this case, I want to say India's policy is very good, great in this case. Why? Because when we can remember India's policy toward Taiwan, when it was started in 1995. But 2008 was the last year India mentioned one China policy in the public document. So after that, we cannot find that word. And under the Narendra Modi government in 2040, the Foreign Minister Swaraj said, if China wants India to accept one China policy, China should accept one India policy. Including all of the territory in the India-China border, is as an Indian territory. That is one Indian policy. And 2020 was the first time India sent a delegation to celebrate President Tsai Ing-wen to sworn in as a second term. This was online, but this was a very important message. So gradually India changed the policy to accept Taiwan in the global system. That is very good attitude, I believe. So this is very good policy, I think.
And what about Japan?
Japan's policy is that we try to accept Taiwan as a partner because Taiwan is very important. And only 100 kilometers from Taiwan, Japan is located. So Japan cannot escape from Taiwan issue. Taiwan is very close friend. So it is not that. So Japan increased our activity to connect with Taiwan. That is also good, I believe. For example, when China blocked Taiwan's pineapple, instead of China, Japan import many pineapples. That is a good attitude and show of force to China. China's attitude is not good. That is a message.
Okay. Sana, I'll come to you. Those who don't know, Dr. Sana is very active on Twitter. I saw your tweet on the Taiwanese election. It was the first country to go off the block this year for elections. We go into elections. The US does. Many countries in Europe. You tweeted about it and about the world reactions that came into that. Now, how has this recent presidential election changed the dynamics between Taipei and Beijing?
This is the outcome that China didn't anticipate and didn't want. What they wanted was to KMT to come back to power. So DPP in power actually means that the status quo, that is the new norm, that is economic coercion, militarization of the Taiwan Strait, and military exercises. So this is the new norm that we have been seeing in the past couple of years. So I feel with the DPP's third win, this is something that we are going to see in times to come as well. I do not think that the cross-strait dialogue would be resumed anytime soon, because China has made it clear, and Alan also mentioned that how they are just saying that if DPP is in power, if you're not accepting 1992 consensus, and if you're not accepting one country, two system, then we are not talking to you. And Taiwan, be it President Tsai Ing-wen, be it Vice President Lai, they all have said, we want to talk to China, but then we cannot compromise on the will of the people. The fate of Taiwan will be decided by the fate of people. And what we are seeing in Taiwan, that more and more people in Taiwan, they're identifying themselves as Taiwanese and not as Chinese.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have Chinese New Year, but they're Taiwanese, right?
So now there is more and more usage of this term, Lunar New Year. So there is Chinese New Year. So there is this narrative that's being pushed that is just not about China. This is a New Year of Taiwanese, as well as a lot of countries in other East Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries. But, if you look at Chinese social media, if you look at the statements on the New Year, it's all about Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
So they see that even overseas Chinese are Chinese. So there's a lot of conflict of identity that's going on, not just in Taiwan, as well as in the ethnic Chinese that are in Southeast Asia. So, but if you look at Taiwan, Taiwan is definitely drifting away from China. And now there is this idea that Taiwan is a democratic alternative to China. And
when you say drifting away, is it just culturally and socially, or is it in every aspect?
I think in every aspect. It's culturally, socially, politically. And I think most important is the political aspect of it. How there is so much pride among Taiwanese government, people, that, we are a democratic country. And I've been living in Taiwan for 4 years. And I would actually say this is a perfect example of how a democracy should be. There is so much accountability, both among the people as well as the government. So Taiwan is definitely a perfect example of democracy. But I do feel that this idea that Taiwan is an alternative to China and Taiwan is a proud democracy is something that's leading it towards like-minded countries. Now we see that there's more integration of Taiwan, as Satar also mentioned. And I feel that I would also like to add what you just talked about, how Japan and India have been very positive towards Taiwan. And I feel that these are the two countries that have been very consistent in their Taiwan policy. And we are seeing these slow changes towards Taiwan. And these are very positive changes.
It's hesitatingly moving forward, isn't it? When it's India. I haven't observed Japan much, but I would think with India, because we share a boundary with China, and it's such a large country and an aggressive and an expansionist country. So anything that we do with Taiwan would be hesitatingly done, because there are more ramifications.
Absolutely. As in, you rightly mentioned about the boundary dispute. And I feel that whatever we do with Taiwan, the first thing we think about is how is China going to respond, and primarily because of the boundary dispute as well as the China-Pakistan nexus. And then India knows what it has been dealing with respect to the two-front threat that China has created over the past decade. But I do feel definitely India is cautious, but I don't think that India is cautious towards Taiwan. India is just thinking of its own security right now. And I'm seeing India's policy towards Taiwan changing so much so that now we are seeing things that has never happened before in India-Taiwan relationship. The Padma Bhushan that's been given to Yang Liu. And in fact, when he was here attending Semicon India last year, and how he said that Taiwan is going to be a reliable friend to India. And he also mentioned that how Prime Minister Modi said that IT is equal to India and Taiwan. So even if it's not in public, we know that there are a lot of development that have been happening. And we know there is a lot of willingness and interest from both sides to advance India-Taiwan relationship. And I think the idea right now is not to just go and say something that's just going to jeopardize the equilibrium in the Indo-Pacific region. The idea is to actually make things work. We are focusing on advancing the economic relationship, cultural relationship, because, these were the basic aspects of the relationship, the unofficial framework of the relationship. But these basics were not even achieved in the past couple of years. So I'm seeing now there is a very consistent approach from both India and Taiwan, and I see it as a very, very positive change.
Thank you. Dr. Young, do you agree with this, that India and Taiwan are natural partners?
Yes. Well, I'm very grateful that two colleagues just mentioned very friendly and constructive approach of Japan and India to Taiwan. And during President Tsai Ing-wen's presidency for the past 8 years, Taiwan has been working very hard to implement our new southbound policy. That is the people-centered signature foreign policy with our partner country across ASEAN, South Asia, but centered on India, New Zealand, and Australia, 18 countries. And this is our approach, regional approach to Asia. I think with this in mind, Taiwan has developed a multifaceted partner with neighboring country, and most importantly, that is India. So with the past years, the bilateral trade volume has increased more than 70%. And we share a common interest in maintaining the free and open Indo-Pacific regional order. That is the rule-based international order, as well as the strengthening of the economic resilience and also the multifaceted bidirectional cooperation and cultural, social, talent mobility. And that is an important approach and foreign policy that during the past years, Taiwan's President Tsai led her team to turn the very pessimistic Taiwan contingency into a very encouraging and constructive Taiwan relevancy to make Taiwan's contribution indispensable, not only in terms of the semiconductor supply chain, but also in other such as regional agricultural cooperation and also the pandemic governance. And those precious experience that we are willing to share with our partners and also contribute to our partners' economic and social resilience. And with that, I will say that India is very positive to our new southbound policy and echo positively to our approach and collaboration.
Thank you. Dr. Ngao, I'll come to you. Does China have the manpower to annex Taiwan? We just saw that China tweaked its recruitment regulations recently. Why did it do that? If it wants more manpower, there is speculation that the first objective would be to annex Taiwan. Do you see that happening?
Okay, there is a sea between the continent and island. So even if they have the number, they need to cross the sea. But that is true. So, but so number is not enough to govern Taiwan. But at the same time, we need to remember the concerning scenario in this area. And when we see the concerning scenario, but still, I need to say, we can win. Because Taiwan's emergency is Japan's emergency. Taiwan's emergency is US emergency. When we check the scenario, if China will not attack the US base in Japan, US fighter jet can bomb the Chinese invading force and return to the sacred place, which is the US base in Japan. So China cannot win this case. So China need to attack the US base in Japan. In this case, automatically Taiwan emergency becomes the Japan-China war. So, and of course, US is also try to protect Taiwan. This means that China need to fight all of the three countries at the same time. So that's why when we check the military balance between China and Taiwan, yes, China has the advantage, but that is not enough. Recruiting many number is not enough too. And in this case, we should not forget the role of India. Indeed, if India cooperate with the US and Japan and Taiwan, China need to divide their military budget multiple forces, multiple fronts. And indeed, India cannot escape from the Taiwan emergency because when we check the career of the Chinese force military officers, indeed, if the Chinese military officers get a high score in the India-China border, they will become the commander of the eastern side in front of Taiwan. That is carrier. So this means that China is testing their tactics in the Indian-China border. After that, they apply this to the Taiwan. So that is the reason these two regions is connected. India-China border and Taiwan Strait, this is connected. That's why Japan, US, of course, support Taiwan, but at the same time, India cannot escape too. That's why we are a very big group. So, because of China, thanks to China, and this is suicide for China.
Okay.
So that's why we can win, I want to say.
Okay, that's you've given a lot of food for thought. So would you like to react to what he said? Because two questions I have, and which I'll pop it to both of you. One, what he said was drawing India into the battle. Sana, I'd like you to pick that up. And two, what obviously China would like it to be, if it was to make one China into a reality, annex Taiwan. The ideal situation for China would be to do it in a bloodless manner, without firing a single bullet. To have Japan involved, Europe involved, America involved is a nightmarish situation for China. But that is Xi's agenda, somehow or the other, President Xi's agenda, somehow or the other, to do it. If it can be bloodless, fine. If not, then yes. So to both the points, could you react, please?
Well, I would say a part of the increasing recruitment for the soldiers in PLA, I would say China utilized different approach to change the status quo. The so-called Chinese, the PRC-led new normal. If we accept this new normal, which means we have been persuaded by the PRC regime. And if you look at, you may observe the recent incident happened in the waters nearby Taiwan's island. And you can see that China enhanced the legal enforcement in the Taiwan Strait and also near the Quemoy Island. So their Coast Guard enforced the so-called investigation over Taiwan's civilian vessel, and to demonstrate that they are having the sovereignty and jurisdiction over Taiwan. But in fact, PRC never enjoyed a second legal jurisdiction over Taiwan's sovereignty or the territorial. And their approach also include to internalize the waters and also to not recognize the so-called median line of the Taiwan Strait. So they are pressing even the air route and also to change the status quo. And that is something caused the crisis. So what I meant is, apart from the military troops, they are calculating and preparing for any kind of the combat at any time. But they will, my very humble predictions is they will not easily launch the war, because if they cannot guarantee the success, that will be a political suicide to any Chinese leader.
Right. Dr. Sana, nobody wants a long drawn-out war. Even when the Russia-Ukraine conflict began, the idea was that it would be a short conflict, but that didn't happen. You can't really, wars can be begun, but ends, you don't know when it ends, right? So, drawing out India, will India have an option? Or as we heard that it's probably not an option for India, it will get drawn if there is a conflict, if China does attack Taiwan. How do you see this?
I agree with both of their comments, but I also feel that the invasion is not going to happen anytime soon, because it will definitely be a suicide for Xi Jinping. So I don't think that he's going to start a war that he cannot win. And I think this is the lesson that he has got from Russia-Ukraine war. And because it would be just one chance for Xi Jinping to acquire Taiwan. And the US, Japan, and a lot of other countries will also, if perhaps not to Taiwan's rescue, but to perhaps maintain the stability in the region. As in, this is a very vulnerable and sensitive area. So China cannot really start a war and then have economic blockade. And then even if you look at Southeast Asian countries' response, it's changing so drastically. We just saw that after the elections, of course, Philippines and China have issues, and how President of the Philippines, he wished the VP, the president-elect. But also, I felt that the statement from Singapore was pretty positive with respect to Taiwan. So countries' approach is definitely changing. They're also realizing that the invasion is not in the interest of a lot of countries, and
from
countries
silence to hesitatingly accepting, right?
I think that's a very good way to put it. That from being blaming Taiwan and the US to becoming silent and now hesitantly accepting that the invasion is not going to happen. And I think I definitely agree that it's just not that India is going to be drawn into the conflict. India is actively thinking about its response. And we saw last year how there was a report that CDS commissioned a study about how it is going to impact India. So definitely there are talks, there are discussions, and India is definitely discussing with other countries, specifically with the Quad members, how is India going to respond and how Quad could respond. Of course, now we are seeing that there is this developmental aspect to the Quad that's being highlighted. But we know the story how Quad was started. So there is definitely...
There's AUKUS too.
AUKUS too, definitely. And then when these two initiatives they combine it together, it's not going to be a very, very good scenario, rosy scenario for China. So China is also very well aware that it's just not Taiwan. Of course, there is asymmetric military capabilities between China and Taiwan. So I don't think that US, Japan, or even India is going to abandon, because it's just not about Taiwan. It's about the Indo-Pacific now.
Correct. I spoke with a former Prime Minister of Tibet, and his view was that he, of course, saw a number of parallels between the Tibetan situation and the Taiwanese situation. But, of course, Tibet of 1950s he was talking about. He did say, because he's been a China watcher, and he did say that, 2024 is a time where over 60 countries are going into election mode. The world's attention is diverted. America's attention is diverted to internal issues. Many other countries in Europe, in Asia, change of government can happen. Would President Xi use that time of diversion of world interest in domestic issues to launch some kind of a military operation, maybe a silent one, maybe a small one towards Taiwan? Is Taiwan fearful of that?
Well, I would say, as a scholar, I would say, from my limited knowledge and observation, I would say we will be well prepared to stabilize the current domestic politics, and also to enhance our contribution to the peace, prosperity, and stability in this Indo-Pacific. And I do know that it is true that there are more than 60 national elections happening this year. And definitely China will take this opportunity to distract the like-minded support of Taiwan, which is other country, to pay attention to cross-strait stability. And actually, before the new president of Taiwan took office in this coming May, China has took action to take one of our diplomatic ally. And I will see that this kind of diplomatic pressure will continue. But the new administration of Taiwan, the new presidency, Mr. William Lai, will continue to carry out the pragmatic and steadfast approach of President Tsai Ing-wen, and to enable our relationship through our like-minded partner, and also to India through the new southbound policy. So I will say that given China will continue to pressure Taiwan and to marginalize Taiwan's role in the international network, but we will continue work very hard to turn the pessimistic Taiwan contingency to a more encouraging Taiwan relevancy.
Thank you. Dr. Satoru, I'd come back to you with the same question. That do you think that everybody's attention is diverted to their internal issues, and that is something that President Xi could become adventurous in his expansionist policy?
Yes, in this case, my concern is maybe attitude of the democratic government in the United States. Because I'm worried the similar situation happened just before the end of the Obama administration. Russia and China move looks like the expansionist. For example, in 2013, President Obama faced one situation, which is he have already set up the red line when the Syria government used a chemical weapon. This is crossing the red line, he said. And despite the Syrian government used a chemical weapon, he did not use something military punishment to the Syrian government. Instead of this, he accepts the suggestion came from President Putin. So after that, China started to construct artificial island in South China Sea, and Russia annexed the Crimea and entered the Eastern Ukraine. So if the Biden administration looks like a little weak government, a similar situation will happen because since the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Russia decided to invade Ukraine, and U.S. policy towards maintaining order in the Middle East has failed. So that's why every year we face a crisis. And so under such kind of situation, before the next president will sworn in the United States, China and Russia want to get more benefit. So that is my concern. So I wish it will not happen, but if there is a possibility to happen, other countries need to prepare the crisis.
Is there any red line, Dr. Sana, which you mentioning that, when President Obama said these are the red lines, is there any red line? He's right. Because one had thought that after the pandemic, these kind of crises wouldn't happen. But 2023 saw that. We saw the Hamas conflict. We saw that the war is not ending with the Russia-Ukraine. It's not. The more Prime Minister Modi said that, in the 21st century, wars are not how we're going to resolve our differences. But it seems like wars are the only way to resolve differences because it's not happening. The wars are not stopping. So what is the red line? And one, that. Two, wouldn't it be an ideal situation to have President Trump back in the White House for President Xi as well as for President Putin?
I think when we talk about red lines, it's very important that now we like-minded countries, and specifically when we talk about maintaining peace and stability, a rules-based order, that we also established red lines for China. And I think for a decade, at least over a decade, we have been talking about China's red lines, that we should not cross China's red line. We have to be sensitive towards China. But we in India specifically have also realized that China is not respecting our red lines. China is not respecting our One India policy. So I feel it is our time to just tell China that no matter what, war is not happening. You cannot take Taiwan like that. And you cannot be this aggressive with Taiwan and other countries. Because if you also look at it, there is a simultaneous pattern with respect to both Taiwan and India. China became aggressive with Taiwan and India at the same time. Like what happened at Galwan? We lost so many soldiers for the very first time in 45 years with China because it was supposed to be the most peaceful disputed borders. So I feel that it's very important that our China policy is changing. And I feel that this is for the very first time indicates that our China policy is changing for good. We really need to focus on the border dispute because the Chinese can't come to us and tell us that, focus on the economic ties, focus on other aspects of the relationship. Border issue, we'll tackle with it. But if you look at the economic relationship as well, look at the huge trade imbalance. Look at the security concerns that have been emanating from the use of Chinese app. So I feel the policy is definitely on the right path. And this is also our way of telling the Chinese that, this is our red line, and we are not going to take it any further. So I feel that this is something that we need to be very clear about. And when we talk to the Chinese, we say that you cannot cross the red lines. And it's just not about the bilateral relationship. And now India is also trying to be a major player in the Indo-Pacific. India is already a major player. If you look at it, look from Europe to Southeast Asia to Pacific Island country, India is actually becoming a very important partner, becoming a voice of the global South. So I feel that India is really listing out to China properly. So I do feel that this has been conveyed to the Chinese. So I do not really think that the red lines will be crossed with respect to Taiwan, and with respect to India, we have seen that the lines have been crossed. But I feel this approach has also told the Chinese that, you cannot treat the Indians like that. And now we are dealing with it. I know that it's becoming very, very difficult to comprehend for the Chinese that today's India is very different from how it was perhaps 15, 20 years back.
True.
But I think there is this realization. I don't think they're still able to grasp it completely. There's lack of understanding of what India is, how India is, because I feel there's a lot of competition going on, and they are unable to accept that, India is also rising, and India is rising fast. And India is a friendlier country to a lot of countries. If you look at other countries in any region, and India has such a positive perception. These countries really view India positively. So India is actually, I would call it a global friend. Mm-hmm. So I think this is something that Chinese really, really need to grasp right now.
Is that the case with Taiwan? Does Taiwan watch the India-China conflict carefully, and does it take back lessons on how to deal with an aggressive China? Are there similarities?
Yes, I would say yes. Actually, Taiwan's tension with China and Indian-China relation can be a sort of the mutual references. And my feedback and also some add up to the previous two colleague is regarding the red line is my reading is if Taiwan is to be taken, and the world will be doomed. It will be a very terrible nightmare when you imagine that the authoritarian, the dictatorship, and also expansionist regime took over and monopolized the semiconductor supply chain and weaponized that against the country across the world. So that is my reading to this red line issue. And in order to not make it happen, so the international community and also our like-minded partners should pay much attention to Taiwan, even during this very high season of the national election. Taiwan will continue to contribute. However, we need more support and also the international attention to pay attention to Taiwan and to work with us. Apart from our natural partnership with India, I would say there have been more partnership and collaboration with neighboring countries, which Taiwan, India, and also the friends in Indo-Pacific region can work together.
I'll take concluding remarks. I'll start with a question, and after that you can take ahead. Can President Xi not attack Taiwan? Can he do that? Is there any domestic compulsion he has? And for his future to continue in power, does he need to attack Taiwan?
I think he need to get something to prove he is a good leader to sworn in as a fourth term as a president of China. So that's why he need to get something. So even if he will not commit full-scale invasion to Taiwan, there is still possibility they will attack some part of Taiwan. And but at the same time, there is no possibility that China can annex Taiwan peacefully, I believe, because the people in Taiwan will not accept the Chinese government because they have already seen what happened in Hong Kong. and Tibet and Xinjiang Uyghur. So that's why indeed, because the Chinese government is not democratic government, what kind of feeling the people has, they do not care. That's why they do not have the know-how to persuade Taiwanese people. And we are democratic people, Japanese, Indian, we can understand because we are living in democratic situation. How to persuade people is not like that. We know that. That's why I believe Xi Jinping will fail to annex Taiwan peacefully. But because of this, they need something, in this case, limited invasion. There's still possibility, I believe.
So, Dr. Sana, I'll ask you this also. This persuasion, the boat of persuasion has sailed by. It's quite clear, listening to all three of you, that Taiwanese population cannot be persuaded to become part of China. The one China is not a question of persuasion anymore. And the path of non-violence which Tibet took is not something that Taiwan will take. And the world will not just watch it go by. In that case, what are the options open to President Xi?
I think this is something that he would definitely like to be a part of his legacy. But at the same time, he also knows that it's just next to impossible to invade Taiwan and acquire the whole of mainland and the outlying island. It's just not possible. And you mentioned about domestic considerations. We know how the Chinese economy is slowing down. So, it will take years or perhaps decades for them to recover if at all they are at the right path. So I do not see the invasion happening. But what I am thinking what is going to happen is that what we're going to see is people, of course, are not going to be persuaded. That's very much that. But what we're going to see is continuity, the continuity of the new norm of the status quo. What we're going to see is more and more military coercion, economic coercion, military aggression. And the idea is just to tell the people that, this is DPP that's been doing it. And DPP is not good for you. So what is good for you is perhaps to vote for someone else so that the dialogue could be continued and eventually go for peaceful reunification. No matter how and what Xi Jinping has been saying about use of force. But I do not think that use of force is an option. And what I am seeing right now is that no matter what, he would like to still go for peaceful reunification.
So psychological warfare is what you're talking about in some form or the other on the people of Taiwan to say that unification with China is better for their future rather than staying in a state of, apparent conflict or imminent conflict. So tell me, will that work? Will that game plan work?
Well, I can use my own personal footnote as example. I was born in a democratic society. I will not surrender to any authoritarian oppression and choose to give up my life of being a democratic citizen. So that may represent, I would say, the mainstream voice of Taiwanese society, that we will not give up our value and our value of freedom and also human right value, and to be a part of the PRC authoritarian regime. And the second, very quick answer, respond to Xi Jinping's choice. I will say to do or not to do is a matter of choice. It will be a decision made by Xi Jinping himself. He paid much attention to the historical status that in the Chinese history. So if he would like to be recognized as a benign political leader with open-minded reform status, he should send the green light to his government and to immediately activate the bilateral dialogue with Taiwan constructively, so that will contribute to the welfare of the cross-strait civilian people and also to the stability of the region. But, however, if he if he continue this approach and also take over Taiwan by force, he would be memorized as a notorious tyrant. I think that is something that he may need to consider carefully and need to escape, since he paid attention to the historical status.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. gentlemen, and Dr. Sana for being part of this and helping us understand the situation in Taiwan and the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's
very
my
much.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching or listening in to this edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash, which was filmed in New Delhi on the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue 2024. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste, Jai Hind.